Welcome back to BVarsity Live.
Talking food.
You're talking food that's not fair to me right now. So we talked a lot of wrestling in the first segment. I think we kind of got that out of the way. Let's move on to sort of some more general issues, some other sports, things like that. And
well, first off, I want to get into another sport that we're dealing with that's getting close to the state playoffs, which, obviously you guys are going to be knee-deep in it on Sunday morning. It's basketball. You guys are moving over to the Golden One Center, the brand-new arena in downtown Sacramento. You guys were at Arco Arena for years before that. Ron, how has the transition to Golden One Center been? And is this going to be a venue that is going to be a lot like Arco, where it's going to be kind of cavernous, or do you think people are going to flock to it because it's the new flashy arena?
I think, the transition's been seamless because the management team has moved over. Most of the people have moved over, and we have someone also working over there that we used to work with a lot in our events at Sacramento State. So that part's been seamless, and the family, the ownership, they've always been great to us. When the Sacramento Kings submit their bid, one of the things they did was they asked every one of their leadership team to mention, what's your favorite memory from high school sports. So all the way from the owner of the team on down, they all talked about their joy they had playing high school sports and what their memory was. And that hit home with us because it shows, again, it's not just about being in the building and making money for them, because I guarantee you they don't make a lot of money on our event. It's about wanting us there. So I think the transition to Golden One is going to be an easy one. And we're hoping that, and we think that we're going to have good crowds simply because people want to come see the new building. We've seen it. It's fabulous. People that have gone to Kings games there, concerts there, have just raved about it. So right. It'll be a good move.
Football, you guys are through year 2 of the new model. How's it gone? I mean,
it's been successful. The nice part about how we do it now, and it's kind of allowed us to transition into other sports with the same idea of the competitive equity, because people saw it work in the sport of football. But it's all dependent really on our 10-section commissioners do such a fabulous job of putting up their team, saying, hey, here's where we think they really fit best. Right. And we can't do that without those 10 people, because no one's trying to hide a team in a lower division. They're all saying, hey, this is where they may be D5 in our playoffs, but they fit maybe in D3 in the state playoffs. And so in order to get true competitive equity, you need that cooperation from them to do so. It's not perfect. We're always going to have matchups that maybe don't end up playing out the way we think they do, because it's high school sports. We've had matches that we thought were going to be tight games at the end that turn out to be a 3-touchdown game, and then we've had vice versa. We're a little worried about the matchup, and it's an overtime game. So.
Well, didn't you guys kind of learn about the competitive equity at the state level from basketball? When you look at, I remember a team, Capital Christian, 3-4 years ago, about 4 years ago, they were playing in D5 in the Sac Joaquin section. You moved them up to the Open, and they went to the NorCal Finals against Bishop of Dowd, which put up a great fight against Modern Day in their 4th championship. Did you learn from that, Roger?
And one of the things that's really changed in high school sports, and in California law, is school choice, parental choice, where they choose to put their child in school. Used to be in my era, in Ron's era, not so much as yours, but you went to school in your boundaries. This is your neighborhood school, and that's where you went. And still, 98% of our kids do that. They stay in their neighborhood, and they go to their neighborhood school. But school choice, state laws allow people to choose much more freely than there was ever before. What we also learned with that change and that evolution across the state, you're not playing against the 3,000 students at the high school. You're competing against the 11 players on the field or the 5 girls on the basketball court. Mm-hmm. And it only takes 1 or 2 really good players to make a difference. And I think where we really saw it really early on was in the mid-'90s. An open enrollment had started, and there was a small school in Los Angeles, Price High School, that only had an enrollment of 98 students. 98. Yet they were ranked number 2 in the nation. And they were playing in our Division VI championships, and they were winning by 100 points. And it wasn't fun for those kids either. It wasn't competitive. Kids want to compete. They want to play. And so that really started the evolution. We looked at it and said, the old-time people still hold on and go, well, I'm a small school in this and these things, and we should be playing against other small schools. Well, the number 3 ranked team in the nation this year in basketball is Sierra Canyon with 240 kids in Los Angeles. Do you really want to go play them? No. So, I mean, that's what's changed. So we believe that it's no different than in the classroom. Ron took trigonometry. I was in general math. I wouldn't be competing with him. So that's the difference. We do that in the classroom, and we've evolved to that now in our sports, because that gives kids an opportunity to compete on a fair, level field.
Your model is pursuing victory with honor. And I think one of the big stories right now is LeVar Ball. The father, Alonzo Ball, who's the standout freshman at UCLA. His two other sons are the standouts at Chino Hills. They won the state title last year. They're a favorite this year. When you guys see a parent like that who comes out and talks about his youngest son, being the next best thing, and then his freshman, his son who's a freshman at UCLA being better than Steph Curry. When you look at that and you understand that that's just the way he is, but what do you tell other parents and how to learn from that and take the good and the bad with it?
These young men, the Ball family, these three kids, they are very good athletes. They're probably in the elite level, and obviously, I believe all three will go on to the collegiate, and we'll have to see how they do if they're continue to improve to go to the NBA. That's not the norm.
No.
98.2% of high school kids nationwide, 98.2. So only 1.8% of kids get out of high school and go on and play at the next level.
And you're talking about junior college, NAIA,
exactly.
Division III, D1, whatever it may be.
So our job as high school coaches, the jobs of the coaches of the sons and the daughters watching this broadcast, their job is to help raise your children to be better athletes, better human beings at the end of the day than they were at the beginning of the day. I mean, when I sent off my son to school, I want him to come back at the end of the day this much better than he was before. That's our job as coaches, to help. And if we can win a few games while we're doing that and use sports as a tool to do that, that's great. That's what high school sports should be about. Mr. Ball, in his most recent comments, he has a different vision. And his vision's great for him and his family, but it doesn't fit the mold for the 98% of our kids at the high school level. And what I really caution is our coaches, don't fall into that. You're blessed if you have a Division I or Division II athlete when you're coaching. Absolutely blessed. But most of the time they aren't. So your job is to help these kids love a game, grow to love a game, and become better citizens and become productive adults. That's our jobs. So where he made some comments, and he's a dad. He's a proud dad. He should be. One of the things that I've learned over the years, and especially recently with these three young men, everybody associated with this family and associated with Chino High School say these are three of the nicest, most respectful young men that they've ever been around, which also tells you, despite Mr. Ball's bravado on everything else, he's raising he and his wife are raising three very good
right.
young kids, and they're doing something right. So everybody wants to jump on him for his outlandish comments sometimes.
Right. His hot takes.
Yeah, but remember, he's raising three pretty good kids. When you talk to people at that school, they go, these are great kids.
Now, you said he's a proud dad. Yeah. No, you said he's a proud dad. You're kind of a proud dad role right now, too. You guys won an Emmy for a multimedia project you did last season. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Well, 2 years ago, we had our 100-year anniversary for the state CIF, and we put on a big production and a big show in Los Angeles, and it was great. And we did a lot of the history. In fact, I came by here,
right down the street,
Bakersfield High. Oh my gosh,
Hopper.
the archives and the things that they had there from back in the early 1900s. So Ron and I, and Ron deserves a lot more credit than I do. Ron spent a number of hundreds and hundreds of hours working with our director to how do we want this to look? What should it look like? Ron, I'd like Ron, because Ron, they'd come in and go, what do you think of this? What do you think of that? And I'd go, I like it. Nah, let's change it. They did tons of stuff to get it to that point.
I think one of the things I like the most about what we did with it, and I think this was Roger's idea, was that we wanted to find stories that weren't, everyone knows about the athletes that have gone on to play, and they're in the Hall of Fame. They've played professionally. They've been great collegiate players. We found stories about people that are now in the robotics industry, that high school sports, the leadership lessons that high school sports taught them, that it's no accident that the majority of women in Fortune 500 companies played high school sports. And those are the stories that we wanted to find and identify, and that's what a lot of the show was about. And that was fascinating for us, finding those people. We found, someone that fought in World War II that was part of a historical trophy game in San Francisco and spoke about how he played in that game. And he didn't talk about winning. He just talked about what it was like to play with his friends and have fun. And it's amazing how someone's talking about their experience in the 1940s, and it's the same answers we get from kids today in 2017 as to why they play sports. It hasn't changed for the kids.
Well, see, that's the thing too, is that maybe you guys can expand on this a little bit more on how the two of you personally feel. I look at a kid. We got a guy here, Jeremiah Foster. He's a senior over at Bakersfield Christian. He is the throwback three-sport athlete. He's going to Sac State on a football scholarship. He averaged 20 points a game for the basketball team, and he was a Central Section high jump champ last year as a junior. When you guys look at it, Roger, when you look at a kid like that, isn't that what you want? Somebody that uses different muscles in his body, doesn't get tuned into one sport, and enjoys the fruits of what high school sports offers him, and is fortunate enough to move on as well.
One of the things, and that's the great story right there. Look at the Super Bowl. 85% of the kids, the players, athletes out on that field, Super Bowl, played multiple sports in high school. Wait till we get to the NCAA basketball. It'll be the same thing. The elite athletes play multiple sports. What's a sad change in my time in the CIF that I've seen is the unbelievable growth in AAU and clubs and all these different things that they're selling a bogus product to moms and dads. And I say that with all frankness, bogus. You need to play only softball. That's the only way you're going to get a college scholarship. So you need to do this all year long, and you have to have a private coach, and you have to do this, and you have to do that, and we'll only charge you this much. Really? That's not how scholarships work, but it's become, the club youth industry has become a multi-billion-dollar industry. Ron's son is playing Little League right now. Little League, that's what it should be. It should be fun. It should be enjoyable. But it's changed. So many people are out there making full-time livings off as club coaches and private coaches.
Camp directors, all these
different things. And you know what? Still only 1.8% of kids are going to get that scholarship and go on.
Yeah, they're not making more kids go off to college. There's only a finite of colleges they can go to. That hasn't raised. That's actually diminished over the years.
Yeah.
Well, we have a few minutes left with you guys. A couple subjects I wanted to broach. I say the Central Coast. They are southern section schools from the Central Coast geography area. 11 of them? 12 of them?
13.
Moving over to the Central section, not next school year, but the year after, 2018. And from a state level, what's your take on that? Do you sort of, if you guys want to do it and the sections want to do it, go right ahead. You have our blessing, or how do you?
Oh, absolutely. And statewide, our bylaws allow for it. In fact, everybody, because it's such an influx of those 13 coming from the southern section into the central section. But there's also, I believe, 5 or 6 schools that are leaving the Sac Joaquin section that are in the Napa area. Napa and Visalia, or not Visalia, Napa.
Mostly the Napa area.
Yeah, Vintage, a couple of those other schools up there.
Because of their proximity, the same as
American
these schools,
Canyon?
their proximity better fits for them, they think, to be in the North Coast section. And we do have schools go back and forth. Over the course of the years, we've had schools go back and forth from the southern to the central and back and so forth. So that has been a norm. What people don't always understand, we have California schools, Truckee and South Lake Tahoe, that play in Nevada. Because geographically, it takes them 30 minutes to get down the hill into Reno, but if they came into the Sacramento Valley just to get to their closest opponent, it'd be an hour and a half, 2 hours.
Yeah.
So
Needles, I think, plays in Arizona.
Needles also plays in Nevada.
Yeah.
And then there's some discussion of some schools on the Arizona side of the border that want to think it might be better for them to come in and play in the Imperial Valley.
What about like Burroughs? Would that be a school that might think about, or are they still close enough?
A little too far.
Yeah, and the schools have to kind of figure out where does it fit best for them, and everybody always has to be cognitive. It's travel, mileage, time out of school. Where does it fit best? And what fits best right now might change in 10 years. I mean, so
hey,
it's always been an easy thing.
You look at schools like Arroyo Grande or Paso Robles, and they're having to travel 3.5, 4 hours for a playoff game in the southern section, where when you look at it and you come back on the 43, it's 108 miles to Fresno, 108 miles to Bakersfield on the drive home.
Well, and the roads, I mean, think about it. 15 years ago, that road's a lot better now than it was 15 years ago.
46 is much better now.
So is 41. Yeah.
Yeah.
So no, from a state's perspective, that's really a local decision. We let the locals get involved in. The only thing we always ask is, hey, there has to be, just like anything else, good communication. It's just like buying a house and moving. There needs to be really good communication.
Yep, and I don't mind a trip to the coast every now and then.
Baseball and softball state championships on the horizon, right?
Yeah, we're moving our calendars up. starting with the 2018-19 school year, looking to move our championship events up either a week to 2 weeks. So,
Yeah, thanks for football in mid-August.
Yeah, so we hope that eventually down the road that will allow the conversation to maybe start again regarding baseball, softball. As it is right now, we'd be playing into mid-June,
right?
And that's just to probably do a regional championship, let alone a state championship.
Right.
But we're continuing to ask that. There's the interest in it. It's a matter of does it fit best and when our kids are now leaving the schools, finishing earlier and earlier every year across the state.
So the first step is the calendar, and then explore from there.
Yeah. One of the things that we did a 2-year study was on the school calendars. When do schools start? Schools are starting the first week in August now. Before Labor Day weekend last year, 90% of the schools in California were in session before Labor Day. Yet the vast majority of our schools weren't playing their first football game until that Labor Day weekend or the one before it. Yet they'd been in school for 2 to 3 weeks. So that's one of the things we've looked at as the schools have adjusted their calendars. We, as sports and athletics, we haven't. So we need to match our calendars to match the school calendars. Because as much as it'll be warm, and I grew up in Southern California, out in San Bernardino, I know it gets hot, same as here in Bakersfield. Mm-hmm. It'll be hot in August. We're playing our football state championships the weekend before Christmas. That's nuts. That's absolutely nuts. So there's no reason we can't be moving the calendar to match more aligned with our schools. And that's what we're doing. It'll be the same with basketball and wrestling and all of our sports. So
it'll allow us to watch a little bit more basketball and wrestling and soccer in December, too.
The soccer championships, that was the last question I was going to ask. Since the seasons are different, is there any...
Not anymore.
They've moved together now? Is there any plans on making that a state championship versus just regional?
Well, I mean, you have the last large section to hold out was really Sac Joaquin, and they're playing their first season of winter soccer this year.
It is this year, okay.
Unfortunately, timing-wise, the worst winter we've had with the rain, so we'll see how that all turns out. But in the north, the championship for the Northern California Regional would start with next school year, the 17-18 school year.
Okay.
Like all of our events, when we do our regional championships, we want to have regionals for several years and let those get established before we move on to a state championship. So a soccer state championship is probably years away, but regional championships will be in both north and south in the winter next year.
So, yeah, people kind of say, well, why don't they have this or why don't they have that? Well, it takes time, as these gentlemen can tell us. Well, guys, we appreciate your time as always, and thanks for stopping by, and enjoy the wrestling weekend.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks, gentlemen.
Thanks for having us.
Ron Nichetti and Roger Blake of the CIF State Office, and we'll be back on BVarsity Live right after this.